Hi, and welcome to the third of 5 presentations on the interwar period, that period of time between World War I and World War II. These are notes 13.1c, and this is, of course, Mr. Marks. While immediately after the war, and for about the next decade afterwards, most of the world was finding itself in a real heyday that would be called actually the Roaring Twenties here in the United States. Not everything was actually as good as people might have thought they were going to be. One of the problems of this was actually overproduction. Overproduction is when the production of goods exceeds the demand for them. Um, because the United States was doing so well and so many people had so many jobs in the United States and in other places that were rebuilding quite quickly after World War I, they were making tons of products, just creating all of these things for people to buy. But the problem was that the world wasn't ready to receive all of these products. Germany, in particular, having been crippled by the Treaty of Versailles, is going to find itself not able to buy them. And in this case, huge cotton bales are actually going to end up rotting without anything to do with them. Too much has been made for them. When you overproduce something like this will cause a massive price drop that makes it so farmers have reduced income, and many of them are forced to sell off their farms, especially as larger farms are able to sell at prices which the smaller farms just can't compete with. This doesn't sound like it's going to end up affecting everything, but the problem is the more people that get kind of forced off their land, the more people that get taken off of their own farms, the fewer people there are to go out and buy things. And many of these farmers needed the money from their crops and such in order to pay for the new farm equipment, new tractors, and other sorts of inventions that were coming out during this time. They weren't able to pay off their loans, and banks were foreclosing on them. I don't know if that foreclosure sounds familiar at all, but this is one of the real concerns about what was happening here not all that long ago. Once you start having banks taking property, you don't have that property being used by the people. They can't get other loans. It creates this downward spiral. The second major problem that was going on during this time was something called margin buying. This is when instead of just buying something outright, you only pay a little bit down and you borrow the rest from somebody else. Now, people people do loans and such for houses and cars. That's not the same thing. This is you're going to buy a stock. Let's say it's worth $100. You only have $10 to buy that stock, and what you do is you say, I'll put the $10 down. You loan me $90, and I will pay you back those $90 with a good deal of interest. If I keep it for a month or whatever. The thing was, the stock market had been going up so fast that these roaring 20s, and people hadn't been looking at the warning signs like that overproduction issue. The stocks were going up so fast that most likely that stock that you bought for $100 today might be worth $200, maybe not quite that much, but might double its value in the course of a month. So before you even had to pay off your loan, you could sell that stock that you had bought for only $10 and borrowed the other $90. You could sell that for $200, pay off your loan without having to deal with too high of an interest rate or even pay off that interest, and make almost $100 of profit. It was a form of gambling, as it were, and it worked because as more and more people bought things which they couldn't afford, that also inflated the price of the stocks, which just shot the stocks up higher in value, which made it so more people were willing to take these kinds of insane risks in order to well, they didn't see it as a risk. They saw it as a sure bet. They saw it as a sure thing to make money without really doing anything other than just loaning just $10. This is going to cause a problem when it suddenly is realized that the values of all these stocks are greater than what the actual companies are worth. And once that happens, then the price goes down. Suddenly that person who bought $100 stock for $10, but they borrowed $90 for it, and that stock's suddenly worth $50. Well, even if they sell it off, that's not even enough to pay back that loan. And we're not just talking about one stock, we're talking about thousands of stocks these people would invest in. All of a sudden, they're defaulting on their loans, and the banks start collecting on this, and actually it starts for runs on the bank. It starts shutting down banks. Some banks end up going bankrupt because without the money being returned to them from these faulty loans, that they've got no money to give back to the people that invested for the savings. It causes what's simply known as the Great Depression. This starts in autumn of 1929, as you've probably learned in your U.S. history class. Lack of money for these corporations as their stock prices drop makes them cut their jobs. Cutting a bunch of jobs leads to high unemployment. High unemployment leads to fewer consumers, fewer people being able to buy things. Fewer people being able to buy things means that less things can be made. That creates a loss in production, which then, if fewer things need to be made, that means that there's even fewer jobs that are out there. So there are more job cuts, and that cycle just continues to go on. I have forgotten her name at this moment, but on the right-hand side is one of just an amazing selection of photographs made by a photographic artist, and it's probably one of the most famous pictures dealing with the Great Depression, who she really wanted to make sure she was able to document exactly what was going on during that Great Depression and how it was really affecting day-to-day life for American families. And this is how it was affecting probably about 1/3 of the U.S.'s population. And in some places around the world, it was even worse than that. You can see on the left a line of men lining up for their free coffee and donuts for anyone who's unemployed. And basically, these men would gather at street corners just hoping that someone would come by in a truck, say, I need 10 workers for today. They were literally living day by day, not just off of their money, but off of the possibility of having a job and even getting paid that day so that they could buy food and or other sorts of things, take it home to their family for that day. When you have this many people who are this dissatisfied with their jobs, you can quite often have some very violent results. And one of these weren't always violent, but they could easily turn them. Well, one of the things that would happen are things called general strikes. You see, the money goes somewhere. All right, during a depression or during a recession, somebody still has the money. These are usually the major business owners, the ultra wealthy, the ultra rich, and they're simply just not investing it in people anymore. They're holding on to it. They're starting to buy more gold, or they're buying more material possessions to kind of that will hold their value longer. And when you get a group of workers that realize this, they'll do what's called this general strike. This is when you have a strike of workers in many different industries all at once. This unemployment, the fact that people weren't hiring enough, the fact that the jobs, when there's a whole lot of workers out there, it makes it so that wages go down, just like supply and demand for anything else, because there's a greater supply of something, the price of it goes down. This is the case for labor as well. Because there's so many people looking for a job, employers don't have to offer as much money. And they were taking advantage of this and were making it so workers literally were not making enough money to be able to feed their families or to be able to keep up on the rent for where they were living as well. So to deal with these conditions, workers would actually organize all across, well, everywhere. This led a lot of countries in fear of that communist revolt that Marx had predicted, this idea that this mass of people could suddenly recognize, hey, wait a second, we get together, we can overpower them. And so general strikes were often declared to be illegal, and quite often police brutality. Police and military forces would be sent to break up strikes and to make unions and union leaders actually illegal to have happen. The government will severely limit the workers' rights to strike during this time due to that growing fear of communism. This picture, by the way, is of a general strike in London during this time period. And you have probably heard, if from the U.S. side of things, that most of the governments will try to deal with this by maybe not giving in to communist ideas, but to start putting out more socialist programs. And an example of this in the United States is, of course, the New Deal. These are a series of government programs which were initiated by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the President of America during the time. This New Deal uses government funds to give work to unemployed citizens and to rebuild America's infrastructure, its roads, its parks, its city sewer systems, the technology which runs America. This will include the institution of the Social Security system, something which still exists today. It's what most Americans rely on for their retirement once they reach a certain age, which may change pretty soon. This system helps the elderly. It'll help people who are disabled, especially those people that suffer injuries through work-related injuries. And any family where the primary breadwinner is disabled or killed. So usually if a father is disabled or killed, the entire family can still receive something from the government in order to make up for that loss. This New Deal will not end the Great Depression, nor will the Second New Deal or other sorts of things which Franklin Delano Roosevelt is going to try to propose. But it does ease the suffering of many of its citizens. And similar programs in the rest of Europe, especially England and France, are what are going to make those nations much more socialist sort of nations than what the United States is today. These programs are made to help alleviate the troubles of something that was not the people's fault. This Great Depression wasn't due to the workers. It was due to a series of those bad events that had happened. And many people felt that it was the government's role to make sure that people were taken care of for. And there was that undercurrent that if the government wasn't willing to take care of the people, that the people would end up taking care of the government.